Okay, we're looking at a 2010 Harley Ultra Classic, and I'm about to take the primary off of the bike. The reason is I've got a shifter problem. I was mostly concerned about this wobble and play in the shifter lever that runs down to the transmission in between the primary and the transmission. Very hard to see, but I'll show you what I found when I put a bore scope down there just to get a good look at the bushing and the spline. So we're looking right down the bore scope, down the shifter lever shaft. You're looking at the hex bolt that mounts the shaft hub to the shaft itself. The transmission's on the left and the primary is on the right. You can barely see. But you can see that the lever moves all over the shaft, left and right, in and out. And on the left side near the transmission, you can see that seal. Well, there's the bolt. There's the seal, and you can see it's all dirty and oily, as if the seal is not working very well at all. So that's got to be fixed. Okay, I've loosened the screw here with a wrench to get that off of the shifter lever, and I've taken out the bolt on the front end of this that attaches the hub to the spline, and now that'll slide right off of the shaft, and this will come right off of the bike. So from here you can see that the splines fit inside grooves here in the lever for the forward lever, and it's a nice tight fit. No wobble or play, even without cinching down the bolt that normally goes through here and compresses the hub against that shaft. This one is wobbling, and there's a leak out of there on top, so that's what we're going to fix. Okay, so next step is to remove the chain tensioner, which I've already done. It's basically take out these two 1/2-inch bolts and slide this chain tensioner away. You'll see that I've got a tie wrap here that's kind of squeezing it together, and that's the preferred way to take it out of the bike, is to put this tie wrap between the chain and the tensioner, wrap it right around here, get it synced up so that it won't spring apart as soon as it comes out. And you slide this thing out, and I've already got it squeezed together, so it's fairly easy, but generally it's in there pretty firm, and you'll have to wiggle it out of there, and then the chain falls free. But this tie wrap is holding this thing together. Now, if you have to pull it out without being able to get a tie wrap around it, it's not really a big problem. What you have to do is, when this thing opens up, you'll see this little wedge slides forward with this spring here. And that spring action is what makes the automatic tensioning work. So when you go back to reinstall it, the thing to do is to pull this wedge all the way back to the rearmost position, and then carefully squeeze this thing together like that. This thing will come right out of there. You can see that this fits neatly into that slot right there. That comes down. Hold that together. And that's the tricky part here. That's why they suggest you put the tie wrap on first. There you go. Okay, that's about as far aft as it can go anyway. And then once you get that all together, you want to hold it together. And when we get back to installing this, what we're going to do is slide it in there with the tie wrap on, bolt it in, cut the tie wrap, and pull it off. Now, the one other thing that I'm concerned about here, I'm not sure you can see this very well in the light, there are some wear marks from the chain on the top of this. Appears to be some sort of nylon, hard plastic. And the book says to replace it if it shows any signs of wear. But I can clearly see some signs of wear. You can almost see the little grooves there, particularly on the front end where the chain comes up. Unfortunately, the only thing you can do with this part is replace the whole assembly. You can't just replace the worn piece. This is all riveted together with roll pins in strategic places, and Harley says replace the whole assembly, don't try to repair it. Okay, we're ready for the next step now. What we're going to have to do is take off this retaining nut for the clutch basket, pull away the C-ring that is holding this plate in place, remove that, and then we'll have access to the main nut. And then you need a tool here to lock these gears so you're not fighting against the motor. And so Harley makes a special tool, but it's nothing but a block, just like what I've made here myself. So I'll just put that in place. I've got 11/16 offset wrench. This nut is not left tightened, it's left loosened. The one behind it is the one that holds the main clutch basket on. Okay, I've got my snap ring pliers here, and we're going to try to get this retaining ring out of here. I think I got it. Yes. Looks to be in very good shape. Now, this retaining plate is removed, and there should be a rod right there. There it is. And we want to make sure that there's no unusual wear here. That all looks very good, straight, unscratched. Also looks very good on first step. But that right there is the big one. So that's the one with the left-hand threads that we'll take off next, but I think what I'll do is go ahead and remove the engine compensator nut first. Now I've got the breaker bar on it. I've got to believe this will work. All right. Got my locking tool in place. All right, there it goes, I think. Yep. Yes. Okay. That should be free now. Let's see if this will finish the job. I think we should be home free there. All right, I'm going to just leave that on there for now, but I think that'll slide right off the spline at this point. All right, I've got the 1 3/16 socket, and we've got to get the locking tool in place. And this one's going to take some leverage, I imagine. I hope I won't need an iron bar for this. Oh, there it goes. Not so bad. Not bad at all. Okay, I've got the large bolts removed. I just need to set this aside from the engine compensator sprocket. So now all of this should come off as one assembly, and I don't know. Oh, that looks like it'll just slide right off, and so will that. So the main trick is just to get it all off of there as one assembly with the chain attached and get it set down somewhere without dropping it or damaging it. So let me prepare a spot for that. All right, I've got a nice clean surface. I've decided as a first step to just take it off the bike, the whole assembly off the bike, and set it on this plastic surface. Let me just find out how to get a good grip on everything. Task at hand now is to just get this off of these shafts. So now I can get to these screws and remove the entire housing, which is the whole objective at the moment. Okay, I'll get a little better perspective here maybe. So I've removed the two starter bolts. There was one here, and there's one about 180 degrees around. It helps a lot to have these long reach hex drivers to get that particular set of bolts from the other side. All right, let's see if this helps it. Oh yes, it seems to help. There it goes. Now it's free. And I'm just going to leave it right there. It won't hurt just to sit right there until this job is done. But now, with the removal of 5 of these sealing bolts, these are special bolts with an O-ring underneath of them, this entire housing should be free of the bike and get access to this shifter lever problem that I'm trying to fix. So all the bolts are removed now, and you can probably tell these have these little O-rings. They're all quite compressed and distorted. I think Harley wants these to be replaced at every use. Now's the time to try to pry this loose from the bike. Shouldn't be too difficult, I hope. There it comes. You can see the inner race staying with the bike. Yes. And there we go. Everything in there actually looks nice. Okay, so we have the inner housing replaced. Don't know if that needs to be chromed or not, but now is the time to consider it. And then I've got to take a look at how to repair this. You can see the dirt that's crusted up. I'm almost certain there's an oil leak on this side. That side looks dry. This side on the bore scope behind this lever and in between these two look very, very messy, filthy, soaked with oil. Okay, very quickly, what I'll be doing here is trying to remove this lever so that I can get behind it and replace the seal and find out what other damage there is. Well, my snap ring pliers, with a little bit of adjustment here, was finally able to get this very small retaining ring removed. Okay, you might be able to see I was able to pry this little seal away from the shaft with the dental pick. So now it's time to put the oil seal back on the shifter lever shaft. And the first thing you've got to do here, of course, is lubricate it very well. I've got some Send 3. And then the trick is to get it onto the shaft beyond the point where the retaining ring groove is, so that the retaining ring has something to work with. I've got a little special tool here that I got off of a ballpoint pen, something that's not sharp or any kind of metal that might damage the seal, just to help push it in a little bit. Okay, hopefully you can see in there that we've got the seal well into the shaft there, and there's plenty of clearance, and the shaft is in there securely. And next we'll put on the washer and the retaining clip to hold that all in place. The shifter lever will be pretty easy. Basically, it needs to go one notch forward of vertical, so right about there. I'll just tap that in, loosen this up, get the bolt in there, get it settled, and cinch it down. And it's solid as a rock. So nice to have one problem solved. Okay, first step is to change this O-ring off of the starter housing. Okay, all done. All right, to prepare the housing for reinstallation, we've got to get rid of the oil seal here, and of course clean up all the surfaces. It's really fairly straightforward to do this with a hammer. Not that we're going to hammer on a seal. We're just going to use it to leverage this open end wrench right here. Gently work it up, and there it goes. It just pops right out. So to replace the seal, just like the transmission shaft, we're going to want to lubricate, nice thin coat everywhere so that there's no damage to the seal as we slide it into home base. And the seal has two sides. The oil side is the flat side. On the Harley part it's marked oil side down, and of course that faces the bearing and the crankcase where all the oil is, and it'll go right in here. That's about it. Looks very good. Sounds like a storm coming. So I wanted to be sure that the belt was actually tensioned properly while the housing is off, because it was awfully loose before. I don't know if you had noticed in the earlier shots, but I could probably get an inch deflection just like that. It was very loose. I thought it was so loose, and I thought that this can was so far forward here that I might not have enough adjustment room, but as it turns out, I'm not sure you can see it on the can, but I probably didn't move that up more than a 1/16 of an inch, and it immediately took up all the slack necessary to bring it within spec. And so now I've got the proper deflection down here, or inspection hole for deflection, and it now meets spec with the 10 pounds of force at that point. So the first thing we'll do is we'll put this gasket right here, and you want to make sure that you get the two dowels in the gasket that allow it to be centered. There you might see a little profile version of them there. That helps align it properly. One thing that'll be important when aligning the gasket onto the engine is to make sure that these dowels go in the recessed part here. I don't know if you can see that well. It's a little hard to see, but this part is recessed, the opposite side is flush, and the dowel has a lip. When you press it in, that recesses into that countersunk hole, just like that. These things are not equally spaced, so it is important to get these lined up just like that. These are larger holes here, smaller holes here. And the last bit of preparation here is we want a thin coat of lubricant on this rubber seal. So as you see, you have two larger holes here that get attached with the internal sealing fasteners, and these on the outside forwardmost part are the long bolts. And the dowels, when installed from the right side in the proper position, all of the holes line up perfectly. So right now I'm just going to apply one more clean protective layer of tape around these splines so that they don't damage the oil seal as it comes back and mates in that position. So I've got some fresh Sin 3 here that I'm going to use to lubricate. So let's see how this works. Should be able to walk that back on. And there it is, nicely seated. Now Harley wants to see brand new sealing fasteners. These are the ones with the O-rings in the bottom and with the thread lock already pre-installed. They say these are not to be reused, so they've got to be replaced. So all the 5 bolts are snug down, but with no torque on them yet. Harley specifies the torque sequence is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, kind of inside out. So that looks like it. Just double check. Got the torque wrench set for 27. It looks like it's reading consistently. So I believe that's done. So just even with getting that gap, getting the bolts to get that gap down to 1/8 of an inch makes all the difference. Now this thing, as you can see there, it slides up very nicely right into the housing. Gap's closed, so now all I have to do is go back and wrench a little more and it'll be tightened up to torque. All right, well that part's all done. Nice fit, nice flush fit. Those screws went in nicely. So the next task at hand is to take the primary drive components, the clutch basket and the engine compensator and the chain, all as an assembly, pick it up with 2 hands and install it on those 2 shafts. So we've got to prepare the shafts, a little light lubrication again. We've got some lubrication already on the drivetrain. And if you have kept this together as an assembly, as I did, then you will automatically have the chain going in the right direction. It's best for wear if you don't alter it and reverse it. Keep it the same way it was. It doesn't have to be on the same tooth or anything. It just needs to be going in the same direction. Okay, here we go. This time I'm going to go right in, engage the heavy part first, then hold the chain up and get this part engaged, keeping my fingers out of the way. Excellent. Got it all in there. Excellent. All right, we'll get the chain tensioner in there. Excellent. So in preparation for torquing these downs, we've got a left-hand thread nut here, and we've got a big bolt to go in here. So I'm going to put some red Loctite, 2 drops, on the interior threads of this nut for the clutch basket. And then take the 1 and this is a 1 3/16. It's a little awkward because it's counterintuitive going left thread. Get it started there. All right, snugged up. Same on this one. We'll bead 180 degrees apart. This is regular right-hand thread. So we'll have to use our handy-dandy locking tool again. It's really about a 7 1/4 inch long piece of poplar. Oh, it looks like it's about 3/8 thick and about 1 1/4 inches wide. Anyway, it worked great for loosening these bolts, and I'm counting on it to do the same for us on this side. So we'll put a little tension on there. And what we're looking for, the way this one gets torqued, we want to go, here, let me get this. We want to go all the way up to 100 foot-pounds to start. Then we back off 1 full turn, and then we go to 140 foot-pounds from there. There's the 100. Now we're going to back that thing off 1 full turn. All right, still looking for 140. Got it. One more. All right. That's 140. That's actually 141. Close enough. Left threads. Okay. We only are looking for 80 this time. Okay, that's in there. All right, it's time to install the rest of the clutch engagement mechanism. So we insert this rod, same direction it came out, and then we insert this adjustment mechanism in there, again the same way it came out. Harley's made it easy for us. It says out, that's the one that faces out. And that makes sense because this is the adjusting hex that we use to adjust the clutch. So that's going to go in here. And then the only thing we need is this retaining ring. Let's get that in there. Squeeze it up so it gets in. And then make sure it is firmly seated in that groove. Okay, I've verified that the ring is in there. In fact, I can test that by putting a little tension on this thing, and the plate is staying securely in there. All right, it's time to install the chain tensioner. And if you remember, when I took it out, I was concerned that it had some pretty good visible signs of wear. It doesn't look too bad, but I could not get a clear definition of what the wear limits are for one of these. And since this bike has 30,000 miles, I decided that for $100 I'll just get the whole new assembly. I think it's $94 from Harley. And so the new one looks like this. And it looks identical except for the color. I'm not sure that's significant. And of course it has this much nicer little tab here to hold it locked in place. They still have the tie wrap there. And I'm sure you cut that and then this tab will fall away and it'll work just like the old one. It has the identical part number. Basically, it's going to slide right up in here. So we'll get that one started. Get this one started. Got it on 19. There it goes. There we go. So we cut this tie wrap. Hopefully you can see that down here. There you go. Just slide it out of there. Tie wrap's gone. And then we take this tab off. There we go. And there it is. You heard it click as the chain tension came up. Now it won't really be fully adjusted until the first ride. And it's a ratcheting type automatic adjuster, which means that it'll tighten automatically to the desired tension, but it won't untighten ever from that point forward. Okay, the drivetrain is all complete now. So the next step is simply to adjust the clutch. So to prepare for that, you need an 11/16 wrench and a 7/32 hex key. And we'll be working with this adjustment stem here and this lock nut here. But before we do that, we have to come up here and make sure that there's plenty of slop in the cable. And the way to do that is to simply adjust the cable at the jam nut and cable adjuster that's in the front of the bike, and just back it off so you have plenty of slop. Not too much, just enough. Make sure that you're never going to be fighting the handle when you work down here. Okay, and then all we do here is simply, let's get that lock nut out of the way. We just simply find the point of engagement. If you look real closely in this area, you can see a gap form when that backs off. And right when it contacts this retaining ring is where the clutch begins to actuate. If you look real closely here, you can see the clutch actually move as I twist the screw. So we want that, just find the moment of engagement, which happens to be right about here. And then the adjustment is simple. Back up 180 degrees and tighten it down right there. So we're going to tighten that right there with 11/16 offset wrench right there. Boom, that's it. I'll cinch that down in a second. Just want to show you how it's done. The clutch is adjusted. Now we have to go back and take out the slop here, and we do that by going back to the front of the bike where we loosened it up earlier and just tighten it up until you get just the right amount of free play in the lever, maybe about that much. Okay, so I've adjusted for just 1/16 to 1/8 on the lever before it engages, and it has a nice solid feel now. And if you watch, you can see the clutch has a nice little travel. Okay, we're coming down to the home stretch now. Not a lot left to do besides put the cover on, fill it up with fluids. Just got to get this gasket, use a new gasket, hook it on these spacers on the left and the right, and then put the cover on, remembering that you got to use the long bolts on these 4 front holes and all the short bolts on the others. And that's about all there is to it. So I think our journey here inside the primary is about done. Looking forward to putting it all back together and taking it out for a test drive.